very happy to have you back again. Wow, have things increased since we had you
Well,
on here?
well, they certainly have, unfortunately, or whatever, depending on how you look at it, I guess.
Right.
It certainly is it's a pleasure to be back on again.
Thank you.
Those folks that are not familiar with what we're talking about, I guess everybody really is, for the most part, at least have a somewhat of an insight or an idea. But what we're talking about, of course, is the pending return of Nibiru, or Planet X. It's got a multitude of names referred to as the wormwood in the Bible. And, of course, there's been many tags on the name of this, let's say, the 9th or 10th planet returning on a large orbit that has had it coming around. There's kind of a debate as to whether there's every 3,500 years or 350 years, and that relates strictly to a simple question between different groups that have studied it, followed it. Many of them, folks that have certainly studied it longer than I have, people that have spent their entire lives in the pursuit of understanding and studying the planet of Nibiru. And the simple question between whether it has come around 10 times of 350-year cycles, or if it has come around only on a 3,500-year, only to the fact that the numerical conversion from the old times, and of course there have been many updates on calendars and what have you, that type of thing, a lot of changes, obviously, over, let's say, a period of 1,000 years or 2,000 years since the time of Jesus Christ. It certainly has been a lot of variations on calendars and what have you. But the big deal was that they did not utilize the simple figure 0 until some period of time, like in the time of Caesar or something like that. So when they were writing 3-5, whether it was 350 or 3500, it makes a big difference relative to the time. It's either 3,000 or 300. So there's kind of a debate, but that's not relevant. It's the studies of the people that have really done serious studies for many, many years. The bottom line is that it appears that it will be returning soon, and in terms of soon, some people have figured it down to the very day, being some point in time in either March, late March, or early April. And that was a period of time that all of the people that have done the real historic in-depth studies, some of them, like I say, for 30 years of their lives, all kind of agree that there's no question that the previous time when a catastrophic heavenly body did this passing close between the earth and the sun, and did their pass and caused unbelievable havoc on the face of the earth, and it literally was always the March to April period of time. So the next point, it was like relative to all of the scriptures, the biblical accounts that fit into it, and of course the even including the Chinese emperors going back a couple thousand years. Their astronomers had always marked it at the same point in time, and even geologists, when they do those samples where they dig into the ground and they can actually read the geological, let's say the earth itself in the ground, and they can measure periods of time where there was either a lot of growth, vegetation on the earth, or there was absolutely none on several sequences for like a period of 50 to 100 years with almost no growth at all, and then it would start up again, and then in a period of time there would be another, let's say, a stripe running through the ground of the Earth itself, and would indicate that there was another period of the same kind of non-vegetation where all living things were predominantly wiped off of the Earth. And they can go back, of course, and they're still doing that actually on a daily basis. They do it in the North Pole, the South Pole, and, of course, all around the equator. And and all of these vegetation periods of no growth they match up. They're identical around the globe. So something happens every 300 years that is causing a complete destruction or pretty much a wipe-off of things growing. So all of these things, you have to put those all together. Now, as far as, and there are people that have really, like I say, just been studying the planet X Nibiru itself. And there's a fellow named Gil Broussard who has done a really in-depth, I think a wonderful investigation on this for many years himself. And you people can look that up on the computer on Gil Broussard. And he has this fantastic group of charts and things of that sort to explain and how it relates to the Christian Bible and the events that have already taken place previously. And he literally lived in China for a while and had the ability to study the library and the old accounts from the Emperor of China and the astronomers that worked for the Emperor, and all of it corresponds. It comes up the same period of time and the same effects globally. But how I got into it, and I produced this report, a DVD program, and did it, and actually worked a couple of years on it myself, because I have been, I'm a government whistleblower, if you will, and I have been involved with chasing criminality in the government for many years myself. I've been a federal witness. I've testified before the Senate Intelligence Committees. I worked for at least 5, if not 6 or 7 major government inquiries, working, supplying information for the congressional inquiries, actually several of them that were some of the biggest in the history of our country in the last 50 years, I guess. And so when I started looking at, had someone come to me and said, "Hey, Bob, we're missing billions and billions of dollars out of these different budgets." This is like about 3 years ago, actually. And they asked me, they said, can you look into this and figure out what's going on? Because for some reason, these aren't the regular, what I refer to as theft of money out of the government by individuals that I'm used to chasing, and it even includes drug operations connected directly to our intelligence agents and things of that sort. And I had been doing that kind of thing for a long time, but this was big money. It was billions of dollars, even, believe it or not, trillions with a T, vanishing from the different budgets and what have you. And then at the same time, after I started looking into it, I discovered, to my satisfaction, as to many other people, that the gold out of Fort Knox is all gone. So now we're talking, whatever the amount there is unbelievable. We're talking tons and tons of gold vanished. It's not there anymore. When a couple of years ago, when some of the governments wanted to get some of their gold back out of Fort Knox, they actually were told that they couldn't get it, and they even couldn't get an audit. They couldn't even find out how much of their gold was left. And in Germany's case, we're talking 1,500 tons of gold that they had on deposit at Fort Knox that they could not retrieve any of it. Now, eventually, after a year or so, 2 or 3 years ago, after a year of doing a lot of shenanigans, they did get some of their gold. But the bottom line is the gold in Fort Knox is gone. We've got budget fraud going on all over the place, and I couldn't figure out why. And I of course, had nothing to do with Nibiru in my mind. I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know a lot. And to me, when it's something that as a guy that's actually been a candidate for the United States Congress in 1990 myself, and being involved with the inquiries professionally for such high-level investigations. I even did an inquiry for Manuel Noriega's lawyers when he was being charged with drug connections into the government. I was hired by them to do a report. The bottom line was that I didn't know anything about Nibiru, and then somebody came to me and said, well, first off, I'm jumping ahead of myself, and I got to compress all this because I want to answer some update information for you guys. But what happened when I started looking into it, then I discovered, looking into the money, the vanishing of this money, because my problem was, once I realized that this was real, that there was trillions and billions disappeared, okay, going someplace, being stolen, manipulated or moved or something. And, you can't money launder $1 trillion. If you were a big drug smuggler, you have a heck of a time hiding or money laundering $1 trillion, obviously. So I couldn't understand what was happening. Then I found out somebody reminded me of information that I did know back in 95, and that 1995, and it was reference to underground facilities that were being built. And again, I never chased that too much. I did go down in 1995 under the airport in Denver and verified that, in fact, there was this huge facility which is still under construction in the Denver airport underneath of it. That's real. And it dawned on me, well, wait a minute. So I looked farther into it, and I found that there was actually about 100 underground facilities in the United States. Then I found out that Russia in 2000 and from 2012 through 2014 had been building as many and had created 5,000 underground facilities in Russia. Now in Russia, the facilities, these people underground for a long period of time, but they had built those. They had, and they had a time schedule for themselves, and that was that by the beginning of, I believe it was 2014 or 2015, by the January of either 14 or 15, that those 5,000 were to be completed and ready for occupancy if needed. Same case in the United States. They had been putting for years huge amounts of the foodstuffs, dried stuffs, survival foods. They had contracted with all the big companies, and they were taking about 80% of everything being made in the United States for survival foods and buying it up and putting it underground. And they all have dates. The dates were basically to have the underground facilities ready for use, and within about 7 months ago, they were supposed to be finished and totally up for use. And that, I think they pretty much reached that schedule. Question obviously was, what is it that scared the upper level, the elite upper level of these governments to create underground hideout facilities for survival for themselves? And that led me to the Nibiru possibility, the returning of Nibiru. And so I went ahead and I worked actually worked a couple years on research and almost a year producing the DVD report that I had finished 1 year ago when I first released it. And it's a large 4-hour double disc DVD that explains almost everything to do with it, the scientific astronomical reports on it, the biblical parts, the relationship to the Bible, the relationship of the Catholic Church to what's going on, whether they do or don't know about it, and what their attitude is on it, and et cetera, et cetera. So we completed that. It's then since that period of time, I have made several predictions in that DVD. Of course, everybody says, "Oh, you never want to make predictions because if you're wrong, then you're a fool," you know. So everybody steers away from that. But I did make some, and I'd be glad to go over some of those things that have taken place. Actually, everything I mentioned that I thought would happen has happened. And do you have any special question or direction you wouldn't want to go tonight?
Oh, this is such an incredibly vast subject, as you know. I can only imagine that your 4-hour DVD basically is only able to scratch the surface of each one of the elements that is obviously, once you connect the dots, pointing back to some series of events that are so utterly cataclysmic that would cause not just, for example, you know, you may or may not, I don't know what you may know this already, but just for the listening audience, there's been a lot of chatter as of late about the Chinese building a base, some are referring to it as the Yulin Naval Base in Hainan Island, and it's got evidently the satellite imagery is showing that they've spent a whole lot of money to make sure that their nuclear submarines are able to move in and out of an underground facility on Hainan Island without us being able to detect them. Because one of the tactics used to detect and track the locations of nuclear submarines, which are arguably the greatest global thermonuclear war threat in the world today because of their launch to impact time, which SLBM launched off the coast of the United States only has 7 minutes before impact or before detonation, and about 5 of those minutes it takes for POTUS to actually respond. So you've only really got a 3-minute window to respond. So these deep underground bases, the magneto-leviton train systems, we found a white paper written by the Rand Corporation that describes a lot of this stuff is published out there. If you know how to dig and what the words are, the keywords are, you need to search. But these companies like not McDonnell Douglas anymore, but the Rand Corporation in this case, a lot of the big military defense contractors, they have released papers, in some cases 10, 15 years ago, that describe the same things that people who have been claimed to have been in these underground bases, like Dulcie and other creepy ones, have supposedly ridden on these trains and have been there, done that. Supposedly the Mount Graham facility, which is supposedly where the people in D.C. would head to in case of such a cataclysm or a surprise attack, is also connected to these. But everything that you're saying, there isn't a radio show that's long enough.
No, that's
to cover all.
And of course, a lot of people, the folks that don't know me, some people have been following my career since the Iran-Contra inquiries. That was where I first became an interviewed witness in the congressional inquiry relative to the Iran-Contra mess, and then I ended up, from that point forward, I ended up being drawn into, because the people that I was exposed to, all the Central Intelligence and intelligence weapons suppliers, etc., and the overlapping, of course, with drug operations, where we were actually swapping out for the weapons we were supplying into a variety of locations around the globe. We were swapping off for drugs and using the Air Force planes themselves, or Central Intelligence craft, or whichever, and we're bringing back the drugs on the exchange of drugs for weapons, done at the approval and the nod of the President of the United States. which is about as disgusting as you can get. But the people that have known me and what I've done over the last 30 years and so many different inquiries that I was involved with, they're okay. They understand. They know who I am. The other folks that don't, it would take so much time for me to give you a good update on that. I don't want to really waste much time on that on radio time. Like you say, we have so much tons of information that it's mind-boggling. Now, my DVD, by the way, it's 2 DVDs and it's 4 hours long, which is, it's kind of tedious in terms of just because it's so long. But like I say, it pretty much does answer all the different questions. And what's great about it, or people that have been so excited about it, I have live footage besides regular photographs. I actually have live footage of some of the underground facilities, which is great. Because people automatically, they say, oh, well, wait a minute, this is over my head, and I can't imagine this, and I can't imagine that. But I show the equipment by which they actually are capable of drilling into the side of granite mountains with a single drill so large that once it goes in and comes back out, can drive an 18-wheeler easily into the side of the mountain. If you go in twice, or if you utilize one of the newer drills, which is so gigantic, if they put 2 of them side by side now, and as a matter of fact, the Chinese have a 3-headed drill, each one of them big enough to drill a hole in a mountain to accommodate a single 40-foot 18-wheeler truck. The one they have actually is a triple head, and it's big enough to make a space big enough for a 2-lane highway just passing into the mountain one time, backing out, and it's big enough for 2 18-wheelers to go side by side on a single stroke. That's how outrageously big the Chinese drilling equipment is. Ours is equally as huge, but I don't believe we have a triple-headed one yet. But at this point, most all of the major nations of the world, including China, Russia, the European countries, and the United States, and all now have underground facilities that literally are cities underground. And as I said, here in the United States, we have about 100 of them. They're big enough, and they are connected, like you mentioned, they are connected with mag-levitated trains that we've not even seen many of the cities' underground operations and connecting with either highways sufficient for 18-wheelers, which, by the way, we have, like I said, the pictures and the actual motion pictures of underground in these facilities, some of them. And they're big enough and where they're totally connected with either maglev trains or 18-wheeler trucks. I've talked with truck drivers that have made deliveries that have gone underground and drive, let's say, go into a location in Arizona and can come up 1,000 miles away in another state underground, never seeing the light of day until they've completed the trip. So it's pretty amazing. And the success of our government in keeping things secret for so many years, it's so profuse and so well done and so deeply ingrained that the things that we have accomplished and what we are really doing, like in outer space and beyond, is so mind-boggling. It's like Star Wars as far as that part of it is concerned. And for the underground facilities, they have filled them with foodstuffs for survival of 10, 15,000 people in some of the locations. Russia's, the biggest one, is 50,000 people can be kept underground and live rather comfortably underground in Russia. The biggest one they have is about 50,000 for 50,000 people. Now, they are still exclusively designed strictly for the elite at the very highest level of the corrupted, covert government that's now running the United States and those in Russia and in Red China. It's not obviously enough for everybody, and they could care less. They've taken their money. The money's gone. The gold's gone. We have no cash. That's all. Of course, cash is a joke anyhow. It means nothing. It has no value. And again, I got into trying to figure out what in the world was going on. What would be the one problem that would all of a sudden constitute all of the big shots of the countries of the world to build underground facilities for themselves? And the answer is the return of Planet X or Nibiru. Now, I want to make a point because, matter of fact, let me briefly mention in my DVDs, and again, I originally released this 1 year ago, approximately a year ago. At that time, had worked on it for a couple of years, got it done, put it out, and I said in the DVD, I said, here are things that you can watch that will take place as this thing progressively moves into coming back and heading back into the heart of our solar system. And let me describe it basically to people that have not looked at this or heard much detail on this. It appears that Nibiru is about 5, could be 6, 7 times the size of Earth in dimension size. The diameter is about 5 times the size of Earth. It has 3 or 4 moons of its own that actually circle it like its own little solar system. And it, of course, drags behind it miles, millions of miles of space junk trailing along with it as it travels on its orbit. And its orbit is large. It's an elliptical orbit that takes it way out to the very edge of what we would refer to as the Oort cloud, which is this gigantic cloud of space junk, for lack of a better term, that, believe it or not, and those people that are not aware of it, it totally encompasses the entire solar system. So our solar system is in the middle, if you drew it like a big target, so to speak. The center of the target, of course, being the sun for us, and then our 9 planets circling it being our solar system. And then in that solar system being put into the middle of the whole of another big donut, if you will, called the Oort cloud, which is all this miscellaneous space junk. And it's kind of like we're in the middle of all of that. That whole group as an entity, my belief is, and there's people, again, disagreements on this, so to speak, but my belief is, and I think I'm correct, that Oort cloud with our solar system in the middle of that big donut is actually moving as a singular entity through the entire universe slowly, traveling through it. So you have that thing moving through while all the solar system is doing its common circling of the sun by all the planets. The planet, what they call the plane of the ecliptic, which is basically the plane on which most all of our planets are fairly close to running their orbit around the sun, all of them, as we go on out to Pluto, including Pluto. They are all on the plane of ecliptic. Most of the astronomers related to pursuing the study of Nibiru, they also are split not only on how long the time it takes for this particular planet to come back around on its orbit, being at 350 or 3,500 years, our years. There's a conflict between whether it's on our plane of the ecliptic, being pretty much on the same plane, like I say, give or take a few million miles where all of our planets are on. It's kind of like on a flat disk, if you will, that kind of a concept, circling on a big dish or something. But there's an argument as to whether Nibiru may be coming back on 30, 35 degrees or 40 degrees off of the ecliptic, so that it actually could be, it's kind of like thinking in terms of it being, let's say, coming up from the basement to come back around the sun, or coming down from the attic to come down and around the sun, with its orbital tracking being 35 to 40 degrees off of our normal ecliptic. It makes a slight difference relative to where we might expect it to be coming from. And also, it is an infrared planet. It's a planet that's not seen commonly by the naked eye. It does not have its own light, so until it's close enough coming in where it'll start reflecting the light of our sun, we will not see it. There are, of course, major big infrared telescopes that are capable of seeing this, but number one, they're owned and operated by the government that's not going to say anything about it, and or number two, some of them are out so far, the planet's out so far, that we would have to put those telescopes out on huge extended satellite orbits or out into space on. So for the last 25 years, we've not been able to do that until fairly recent. And now we have some huge infrared telescopes way out into our planetary solar system. And they now are taking pictures of planets, and they are discovering huge numbers of planets that they never knew about, some of them within our solar system on the outer edge, some of them beyond our solar system also. Now, RESAG, this is a discovery that, in my opinion, and many other people have been keeping track of this, that this is not, in fact, Planet X. And they said, when they did the news release on this a few months ago, they said, oh, this is it. Maybe this is Planet X. And they got talking about it, but then here's the trick to this thing. What they said was, but it's out so far. Now, they said the size appears to be about what it would be, and it looks like there's other stuff circling it, and it's affecting other planets and things of that sort, or other heavenly bodies, anyhow. And they said that this probably is Planet X. So everybody got excited because it was like an official astronomical announcement and put out into the news medium. All right, even CBS television reported it, okay, on regular network news that, oh, it looks like they really maybe have found this. Okay, this is not Nibiru, and it is not Planet X. And what they've done is told everyone that this is out so far, light years and light years away, that at very best, there's no reason to worry about it for another 1,000 years. All right?
Wow.
That's baloney. Okay? Unless the Bible's wrong and all the scriptures and writings of the Tibetan monks of 1,000 years ago on the top of the mountains and all the rest of that stuff, unless that's all, that would completely null and void. That would make all their information and all the scientific astronomical calculations wrong. Another thing is there has been an impression, when they put out that press release, they put out the impression that, or they put out the release, and it appears, a lot of people thought, they said that it has been seen. When they said they found it, that it had been seen. And people are going on the radio and talking about, oh, now they saw this one, they finally found it. No, they never said that. They have not seen it. It is a mathematical formulation. By watching other things moving around, they are assuming that this thing is there, and they are assuming that it's this certain size in order to do the effects on other heavenly bodies, and they are assuming A, B, and C. They have not seen or photographed this thing at all right? So, again, it's strictly a false flag press release by a pretty well-known astronomer group, and it's to misdirect people. The big thing of the elitists who have built these underground facilities for themselves, they have full intention of never announcing that this thing is positively coming back, and therefore you could start analyzing a specific time for its arrival, all right? They're not going to ever announce that. They cannot announce it to the world, to the people of the globe, the average guy on the face of the earth, because it will, as soon as they announce that this is a reality and it's going to come back, and it will cause the flooding like Noah's floods on the face of the earth. It will take out every satellite before it gets here. Its external effects with gravitational and electronic, just the static effect of this thing coming through. It will take out all of our satellites, all of our signals of satellites. So all that will be down. It will even end up affecting the sun so much that solar flares will completely take out our electricity before it's close enough to do other things, all right? It will take out the electricity, et cetera, et cetera. It will be complete chaos. Obviously, the idea of everybody on the globe finding out there's a thing coming in that's going to potentially wipe out 90% of all living things, from animal, mineral, to children, to all of the people living, and all the animals, and all the trees, and every flower, and every piece of corn, all things growing, and everything will be wiped out from this thing. Because what it will cause will be activity on the sun more than we've had, which, by the way, has increased many times over in terms of crazy solar flares, and now holes in the face of the sun developing, things of that sort, which they can't figure out. But there's no way for them to announce that this thing's coming in. They will not announce it ever. Now, what they must do, this is a political thing, all right? What they must do is have in place martial law prior to the time that people will start seeing it. Now, the bulk people that have been, I think I say, studying this much more than I have for many years, had predicted that between this December that just passed and next 1 or 2 Decembers down the road is going to be the first time that it will be seen visually as a new star in the sky. All right? And it will take approximately 4 to 5 months to come and be going around the sun, circling the sun, then going back out the other side and going back out again on its long journey away from the sun. So it would be a star in the sky in the period of time of about December, and then it will take January, February, and then by March or April, the time of Passover period of time, is when they anticipate that it will be, they will pass and it will eclipse the sun, dragging its, like I say, all this junk behind it, and its moons that circle it will go around the sun. It will take 155 days for it to make that journey. Then it will come back out the other side and head off towards the depths of space once again, to be gone for hundreds of years. The anticipation was that the very earliest would be this last December here, last month that just passed, or 2 months now, just passed, that it should have been seen as an incoming star, and that if that did not happen, which it apparently did not, and we also have seen they have not done martial law or anything of that yet. So my feeling and the feeling of most people involved is that we probably have a year before we have to worry about it again. But the next potential likelihood would be, since it didn't take place last month, is that next December coming, the December of this year, 2016, it should be seen and should pass on March and April of 2017. So we probably have a year breather, so to speak. All right. Now, and again, this is all done mathematically related to the historic and geological information of the previous passing of this planet, and going by biblical, and going by the writings of the monks and the Emperor of China and all of those who, by the way, the Emperor 1,000 years ago in China had very, very advanced astronomical astronomers doing studies for the Emperor. And if they made mistakes or miscalculated things, he cut their heads off. So that was their punishment for being stupid. So they were not fooling around when they wrote these things down. They were all very accurate, and they had written and completely explained what this thing looked like, the direction it came from, where it came, how long it took to go, and what happened to the Earth in reaction to the close passing of this giant planet. Revelations perfectly described it, and describes it one step at a time. And very interesting, the Revelations describes where the leaders and the wealthy and the kings and the queens will go into the side of the mountains underground to hide away. And I thought that's really amazing, because that's exactly what the underground facilities have been created for the kings and the queens and the leaders of the nations to hide away under the rocks inside the mountainside. I thought that was that's
the sixth seal. It's the sixth seal. And
that's
and
correct.
you know, I wanted to share something with you, because this is directly material to that piece there that you're referring to in the Bible, the sixth seal. And that's Revelation, for the listeners that have just tuned in. That's Revelation 6, verses 12 through 17. At the the 17th verse there is, "And the day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" So that marks the period of God's wrath from that point forward in Revelation.